China, a country more varied and fascinating than probably no other in the world. With over 1.2 billion inhabitants, China is the world's most populous nation. Her ancient traditions and revered cultural heritage make her an attractive destination for people from all over the world. The capital, Beijing, is the political, economic and cultural center of the People's Republic of China. The city is divided into 18 districts and counties comprising 14 million residents. The history of the city itself dates back to 1045 BC. The Square of Heavenly Peace, or Tiananmen Square, lies right in the heart of Beijing. Its 400,000 square meters makes it the largest square in the world. From the north, the square is enclosed by the Gate of Heavenly Peace. In 1949, Mao Zedong proclaimed the People's Republic of China here. Today, the square, built in 1417 and reconstructed in 1651, is a meeting place for countless Chinese and for tourists from all over the world. The Great Hall of the People lies on the west side of the square. Its area is 170,000 meters squared, which is more than the total area of all the rooms of the Imperial Palace combined. In the middle sits the red and gold national emblem of the People's Republic of China. In the building, there are 10,000 seated places available. The National People's Congress, for example, meets here. On the other side of the square lies the Museum of the Chinese Revolution and the Museum of Chinese History. In the center of the square stands the Monument of the People's Heroes. 10 main reliefs on the obelisk represent the 10 most important events of Chinese history since 1839. To the south of the monument lies Mao's mausoleum. Every day, hundreds of people queue here to see the embalmed body of the father of the People's Republic lying in a crystal coffin. The Temple of Heaven is located in South Beijing. Ming emperors offered sacrifices to heaven here and prayed for a good harvest. The temple is a masterpiece of Chinese architecture from the 15th century. Its circular structure symbolizes, according to ancient Chinese geometry, the heavens. This site is not to be missed. It was built in 1421 at the same time as the Imperial Palace. The emperor had to argue with heaven several times a year here, receiving then anew a mandate to rule. He reached the actual altar of heaven through several gates of honor or virtue. The altar was set up here in 1530, and it was made of heavenly blue stone panels. Here, at this sacred place, many sacrificial altars and sanctuaries were made. The emperor read prayers here and offered wine and sacrificed animals. At the end of the ceremonies, the sacrificial gifts were burnt in an oven so their smoke would rise up to heaven. The figures on the roofs of the temple were there to ward off bad spirits. One of the biggest and oldest temple complexes in Beijing invites you for a nice walk during all the seasons of the year. Pine trees throughout the park have a pleasant smell, all the more pleasing when you have stayed in the city for a while. The Altar of Heaven, or circular altar, is a round three-tier terrace made of snow-white stone. In the middle of the uppermost terrace lies a round stone panel. The altar emperors prayed to the heavens. If you stand on the central stone and whisper, you hear your words all the more louder. The main hall and 10 side halls are encircled by a wall. The inner side of the wall is called the echo wall because sound echoes here under ideal conditions. A whisper on the one side of the wall can be heard on the opposite side much more clearly. The echo wall counts as one of the wonders of the Temple of Heaven. Besides the wall and other buildings, you can enjoy a look at Nine Dragon Tree. It is more than 500 years old and it looks as if it has swallowed 9 dragons. The temple complex offers a unique chance to feel like an emperor, at least for a short while. The Temple of Heaven is open the whole year from 8:30 a.m. An absolute must in Beijing is a visit to Hutong and a rickshaw ride. Hutong means both a typical old street in Beijing and refers to the streets and residential areas adjoining it. Beijing Hutongs are the most typical of their kind. There are more than 1,000 Hutongs in the capital, and many of them were built during Yuan, Ming and Qing dynasties in the area around the Forbidden City. Today, Hutongs take up 1/5 of the total area of the city. In the Shanghai district, you can experience genuine old Beijing life. In one very small place, several generations can often live together, in contrast to other parts of Beijing where a more individual lifestyle is popular. The old Chinese saying, "Better close neighbours than distant relatives," still holds true here. Yang Tse-Tsing has been living in Shanghai for 40 years. The pensioner used to share the yard with 5 other families. Today, she is here alone. Even her daughter and her grandson moved away a few years ago into a much more comfortable new building. Only old people live in our neighbourhood now. Almost all the young people have moved away. I can understand that. Hardly anybody owns a toilet or has tap water here. Anyway, I would never move away because my parents lived in this house. Everybody knows each other here and people are always ready to help you. A few hundred meters away lies Dashlan, a busy shopping street. Here you can find not only Western goods but also everything your heart may desire. Shopping centres offer their customers stylish clothes made of genuine Chinese silk, as well as souvenirs, such as these porcelain figures. You can taste genuine, authentic Chinese delicacies in any of the eating places on the streets. Life takes place in the street here. People cook and eat in the street, gossip and laugh here, and bargain and trade here too. All of these until the sun goes down. At night, Beijing glows with an unusual light. The metropolis lives through the whole night. The Square of Heavenly Peace exudes a rare magnetism for its audience, even in the darkness. One of the world's most famous pieces of architecture is a mere 2-hour drive northwest of Beijing, the Great Wall of China. The largest part was built under the rule of Qin Shi Huangdi, the first emperor of the Qin dynasty in 221 BC. Finishing work started in the 14th century in order to ward off Mongolian invaders. In essence, the wall represents China's great fear of its most powerful enemy. Changcheng, that's how the Chinese proudly call the marvelous structure. It translates as the Long Wall. That name is something of an understatement. This gigantic construction stretches for more than 6,000 kilometers over steppe and mountains. It extends from Qingwantao by the Qihli Bay, Pohai, in the east, to near Qaotai in the Gansu province in the west. The inner wall extends almost from Beijing to Hanoi. Every day, nearly 40,000 visitors crowd up and down the extremely deep stairs. In fact, it must be a miracle, because the wall is allegedly the only man-made structure that can be seen from the moon. Approximately 1,000 kilometers south of Beijing is the main city of central China, Wuhan, lying on the banks of the Yangtze. Wuhan, with almost 8 million inhabitants, is one of the biggest cities in the People's Republic of China. It has been one of the most important trade centers of the Chinese Empire since the days of the Ming Dynasty. Despite its numerous historical sites, Wuhan is located somewhat away from the beaten track. That is, however, the exact reason why Wuhan is particularly attractive for travellers from the far west. Native residents are so relaxed and friendly to visitors, something you scarcely see in Beijing to such a degree. A must for every visitor to Yangtze, the museum of the Hubei province in the centre of the city. It possesses the most famous archaeological collection in the Republic. There are over 200,000 beautiful exhibits. They all come from a single site, from the 2,400-year-old burial palace of Prince Yi that was found near Wuhan in 1978. Besides 1-metre-tall bronze vessels and ancient vessels for wine cooling, the aristocratic tomb reveals an especially precious treasure, a monumental bell made up of 65 different bronze parts. The bell, that used to delight the ears of the Chinese emperor thousands of years ago, can delight today's listener as well. The museum offers daily musical productions, as they would have been performed then. Within the thousands of lamps and lights, a peculiar light begins to shine, revealing the Yellow Crane Tower. This wooden tower that was built in 1223 for military purposes is one of the 3 most important ones in southern China. It got its name from an old legend. According to the legend, one small pub was visited several times by an immortal who paid the innkeeper by drawing a yellow crane on the wall of the pub. It is said that the crane sometimes got off the wall and danced in front of the guests. Thanks to this attraction, the innkeeper got rich. One day the immortal returned and his pipe playing lured the crane off the wall and he flew away on the crane's back. As a way to thank the immortal, the innkeeper built the Yellow Crane Tower. Yingzhou Harbour. This city east of Hubei with 6 million inhabitants possesses a site each tourist should visit at least once, a completely preserved fortification, which is more than 2,000 years old. The wall is 10 kilometers long, it has 6 gates with wooden watchtowers and is preserved intact to this day. It's become a celebrated Chinese structural marvel. Yingzhou was set geographically in between the 3 kingdoms of Shu, Wu and Wei in the 3rd century. As a place of intersection, it survived many extensive inter-city clashes. Yingzhou's fortification was destroyed several times, as was that of other big settlements in the empire. However, the wall was always reconstructed. Whilst Beijing's last fortified remains were torn down in the 20th century, the inhabitants of Yingzhou have preserved their precious construction up to the present day. In the old town, close to the fortifications, you can admire old houses built in the ancient style of the Ming Dynasty. Visiting old Yingzhou, you feel as if time has stopped here. Before leaving for Shanghai, one should at least enjoy the peaceful atmosphere of Hubei for the last time. Shanghai, the cradle of modern China. It's a busy city, and its infinite skyscrapers rise almost up to the sky. Shanghai's inhabitants like to call their city the Paris of the East. Its 15 million inhabitants make it not only the biggest Chinese metropolis, but also one of the biggest cities in the world. This Chinese port on the Huang River became a gate to the West 160 years ago. And gradually, Shanghai has transformed itself into one of the most attractive places in all of Asia. Open-mindedness and the economic prosperity of the last few decades account for the city's international and totally unique atmosphere. The newly built financial quarter, Hutong, lies in the east of the city. Not long ago, farmers used to grow vegetables here by the Huang River. Today, the Shanghai port is the biggest shipping centre in Asia, and the skyscrapers of varying enterprises with banks or hotels are the highest and the most progressive buildings in the city. Now a tip for all visitors to Shanghai. The 1-hour sightseeing tour around the port is a must, and you'll be surely captivated by the sight of Shanghai's panorama. There is of course a very special shopping mall in Shanghai. You can scarcely find any other Chinese city where you could spend so much money. The shopping centre, Nanying Donglu, stretches from the harbour across the city to the west. It has been Shanghai's golden shopping centre for at least 100 years. If you itch for a variety of souvenirs, you would do well to go to the Old Town as well. You can bargain for jewellery and semi-precious stones, for silk dresses, or you can taste small dim sum's turnovers. Last but not least, you can also admire Shanghai's ancient culture and architecture. One example is the famous Hook Sing Ting tea room. Bill Clinton, the former American president, enjoyed his Yasmin tea here whilst visiting Asia. When the sun goes down in Shanghai, the vibrant metropolis is impeccably illuminated and the real life in the city begins. Countless bars, restaurants and discos try to attract the millions of nightlife lovers with their bright and, it must be said, gaudy illumination. From the 420-metre-high Chiangmao Tower, the visitors to the Grand Hyatt Bar on the 54th floor can delight in the extraordinary view over the whole city. In the pulsating city, unsurpassed in all of Asia, the Hyatt Bar offers delicious cocktails, international cuisine and live music every night. Across the river, you can see a complex of buildings influenced by the Western style of the 20s, when the British, Americans and the French controlled the local economy. By night, the buildings are beautifully lit for the inhabitants of Shanghai to enjoy, and tourists are pulled into this entertainment and economic centre constantly. The majestic Oriental Pearl Tower, with its 468 metres, the highest television transmitter on the continent, overlooks the port on the opposite side. China, a country full of contrasts, bewitches you thanks to her breathtaking beauty and her revered, distinct culture.